So I just wanted to talk a little bit about citrus canker this morning and the recent detections in Alabama. So there are 5 federally regulated pests of citrus that are found in the United States. 4 of them have now been found in Alabama. All of them are present in Florida. So in 2008, we first detected Asian citrus psyllid. And then in 2017, we detected HLB, citrus greening, and sweet orange scab. And then this past year, we detected citrus canker. All of these have been in Baldwin and Mobile counties, the southern part of Alabama. This map down here is the current citrus canker detections. There was 1 in Mobile and then several over the southern part of Baldwin County. And I'm not sure about the status of the destruction of these trees, although I have a feeling that none have been destroyed in the past several months. So what are we looking for? Citrus canker produces these leaf spots on the leaves that are very characteristic. They have these bright yellow halos around the spots, and the spots themselves that can be seen on the upper and the lower portion of the leaf are raised. And they have a kind of like a greasy water-soaked area around them. On the fruit, you get the same thing, except for sometimes you don't get the yellow halo. This picture right here is a recent infection. This other picture is a advanced infection. You can see the spots will start growing and widening, and then they'll start cracking open and look pretty gnarly. On the stems, you get these raised areas that kind of look like paper. So in terms of susceptibility, the different varieties of citrus all have different susceptibility to citrus canker. The most highly susceptible are grapefruits, Mexican limes, and trifoliate orange. The moderately susceptible ones are sour orange, lemon, and sweet orange. And then mandarins are the most resistant, which is good because that includes the satsumas that we grow here in Alabama. However, when you have wounds in the plant tissue, it doesn't matter how susceptible or resistant your plant is. It will allow for the entry of the bacteria into those wounds. And this is what we usually see when we get samples in. It's usually leaf minor damage, and the bacteria has entered in and spread through all of that damaged area. So this is the current citrus canker quarantine map from the USDA. All of Florida, parishes of Louisiana, and there's some little blips over here in Texas in the upper and lower Rio Grande Valley. Our citrus canker detections have been here in Mobile and Baldwin counties, and currently the Department of Ag is trying to decide if they're just going to quarantine these 2 counties or if they're going to quarantine the entire state. Because citrus canker can spread so quickly, they're afraid that they're not going to be able to get in front of it. This is the map from 2017 of the known distribution of citrus canker and citrus greening in Florida. So you're looking at these little blue dots here, not the orange ones. These are citrus canker. And this is the most current map that Florida has. You can see some little blue dots up here, but you don't see any in the panhandle. But I found this blog article from 2013 from the University of Florida talking about citrus canker detection in Gulf Breeze, where they found at least 27 trees that were infected. And I don't see any little blue dots up here in the panhandle, so I really doubt this map is accurate. So I wanted to talk about the biology of citrus canker so that we can think about how to control it. So you have these lesions on the leaves, the fruits, and the stems. The bacteria reproduces inside those individual lesions. And when you have very high moisture, it will ooze out on top of the lesion, as you see in this somatogram. So when rain splashes, it'll hit that ooze and it'll splash it around. And this moves it locally from leaf to leaf and possibly from one tree to a tree right next to it. But when you get wind-driven rain and the wind is more than 18 miles per hour, that wind will force the bacteria into natural openings, including your stomata, or into any sort of wounds, such as wounds made by thorns, insects, leaf miners, blowing sand, any kind of wound. So leaf and stem infections occur within the first 6 weeks after growth starts. So it's the youngest tissue that's going to become infected, unless you have a wound present, at which time any tissue can become infected. The tissue becomes more resistant as it matures. And for the actual fruit, the most critical period of infection is between 1/4 of an inch and 1 1/4 inches diameter for the fruit. And the reason this is because the stoma stay open for longer periods during that first initial growth. And then the fruit's going to be susceptible for about 60 to 90 days after it starts growing. So citrus canker spreads in several different ways. Short distances, it spreads by wind and rain, and this is within a tree or to neighboring trees. Medium distance, it spreads through tropical storms, hurricanes, tornadoes, even just regular thunderstorms. And this is movement from one county to the next county. And then long distance, it spreads through the movement of diseased plant material. So this would be the way that it moves between states. And then you have workers that when they're working in the field, if the bacteria is present, they can carry around anywhere they go. So right now, curative management is not an option for citrus canker in Alabama. Trees have to be removed if they are found to be infected. And this is because they are trying to completely get rid of the disease if they can. But prevention can help to avoid infections. And for commercial growers, this includes sanitation, windbreaks, copper applications, and leaf miner control. For homeowners, prevention is going to be purchasing trees that are under a citrus compliance agreement with the Department of Ag, and not going out to a flea market and purchasing trees that somebody has brought in from other states that will likely harbor some of these diseases. And then maintaining healthy trees if they're in their landscapes. So we know what sanitation is, but to talk more about windbreaks, so this is just planting these tall plants around the perimeter of the orchard. And so what this is supposed to do is just slow down the wind speed. It doesn't have to completely stop it, and the windbreak doesn't have to be solid. It just needs to slow down the wind to less than 18 miles per hour, because that's when the bacteria is going to be forced into the natural openings of the plants. If you can slow down the wind, then you can give the copper barriers time to work. And it'll also prevent wind-induced injuries, which will allow the bacteria to come in also. For the copper applications, we know that copper is a protectant fungicide, bactericide, but its protection is going to be lost very quickly due to rapid expansion of the surface area. So if you're thinking about that newest growth, it grows very quickly. That copper just sits on the surface, and as that tissue expands, you get cracks in that copper barrier. So copper compounds need to be applied frequently, usually every 21 days. And it needs to be initiated when growth starts in the spring. For Florida, because nobody's done any work on this in Alabama, that means that it needs to be applied in mid-April, early mid-May, and then late May or early June. But this is also going to be dependent on the weather and the progress of the crop. The rates of copper are also going to be dependent on the weather. You only need 1/2 to 1 pound of copper in dry weather, but you're going to need well over 1 pound in wet weather, because that copper barrier is going to break down with prolonged exposure to water. And then leaf miner control. So as I said, the leaf miners aren't actually spreading the canker. They are opening up a giant wound in the leaf, and that's allowing the bacteria to enter. But they also increase the inoculum level of the pathogen because they give it a lot more area to reproduce inside the leaf. So for commercial groves, young trees need to be, they need to have systemic insecticides applied. And then for older trees, you need foliar applications. And you can find those chemicals from the Florida Pest Management Guide for citrus leaf miner control. For homeowners, there's only two options. You have Bayer Advanced Fruit, Citrus, and Vegetable Insect Control, or you can use horticultural oils, but you can't use those over 90 degrees Fahrenheit because they'll cause phytotoxicity to the plants. So what we need people to do right now is to be looking for these symptoms and to report it if they find it. They can either report it to the Department of Ag and Industries, to their local county extension office, who will probably contact me, or you can just report it directly to me. The majority of all of the federally regulated diseases that have been found in Alabama have come from homegrown citrus trees. And this ends up threatening the commercial production because it acts as a source of disease introduction and as a reservoir for these pests. We put together an article on citrus tree care for the home gardener, and it lists all of these 5 federally regulated pests in it, and it has lots of pictures so that they can match up symptoms. It also lets them know how to properly care for citrus, because most people think that citrus is a plant it and forget it tree, and it's definitely not. I also put together a citrus sample submission form. So we're going to start offering screening for these 5 federally regulated pests at the lab. No charge, but we need to have this form filled out. And that's all I have.